can make me.
Hi there! Welcome to Legal Banter 254, where we talk about
the law,
life,
and everything nice.
Stay tuned! So guys, welcome back to another episode. So today we're continuing with our theme, our family law theme. So one of you asked us about the process of adoption. So today we're going to take you through an overview of the adoption process. So let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is adoption. So adoption is the legal process by which a person obtains parental rights over a child. So at Legal Banter, we believe in adoption, and we believe adoption is a beautiful process because you get to give a child who's not your flesh and blood a home and a chance to be loved by a family. So in Kenya, adoption is governed by the Children's Act and the Hague Adoption Convention, which Kenya is a signatory to. So we'll start with the three categories of adoption. The first one is international adoption. So this relates to non-Kenyan citizens who are seeking to adopt a child from Kenya. However, in September of 2019, the government banned the adoption of children by foreign nationals. So this was a move to protect children from rogue adoptive parents, and the primary consideration was to consider the best interest of the child. We've all had cases of child trafficking and people being sold into sex slavery, so that was in a bid to protect the child. The second is local adoption. It refers to adoption of Kenyan children within Kenya by Kenyan applicants. The third one is kinship adoption, so which refers to adoption by applicants who are relatives of the child. So in the unfortunate event where maybe you want to adopt a relative, a child who's been left by your relative. Let's say you want to adopt your sister's kid, your brother's kid, that's what's referred to as kinship adoption. So who can be adopted? So it's any child who is resident within Kenya is eligible for adoption, whether the child was born or whether the child is a Kenyan citizen and whether it was born in Kenya or not. And also the child has to be at least 6 weeks old and declared free for adoption by a registered adoption society. Keyword, registered adoption. You need to go to a society that's registered. If a child has been declared free for adoption, it means that one, the child is abandoned and the whereabouts of the guardian or the parents are unknown. And also number two, the child is an orphan and there is no guardian or caregiver who's willing to take care of the child. And the third one is the parents of the child are willing to give up their children for adoption. So there are cases where maybe parents are not able to take care of their child, maybe due to finances, so they can give up their child for adoption. I think the case is for Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
And the girl she adopted from Ethiopia. Yeah. Yes. And then the fourth one, is the child requires an alternative permanent placement. So this relates to, let's say, a child has been placed for adoption, and maybe in the unfortunate event of death of those parents, that child requires to be placed in another home. Yeah. So Bex, maybe you can take us on who can adopt, the requirements of who can adopt.
Yes, so let's go straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
There are several people who are allowed to adopt children in Kenya. The first one is you have to be 25 years and above.
Yeah.
I don't know why 25. I feel like that's a very high age. I mean, even at 21 can be my opinion. But they don't say it's 25 years and above.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is that the age difference between the mother or whoever wants to adopt and the child has to be 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is you have to be less than 65 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think of course the elderly, I mean at 65 you're quite old.
Yeah.
You might not have even the finances, or you're retiring. So I don't think they want you to start taking care of an infant or a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one is if you're a couple and you wish to adopt, you must have been married for 3 years.
Yeah.
Married for 3 years. a valid marriage.
Yes,
Watch our
go back
latest
to our video.
yeah, on types of valid marriages in Kenya. And lastly, if you, for example, if you had a baby and you're married, if you're a mother, you had a baby outside wedlock and then you get married, and the new spouse wants to adopt your kid, that is another way someone can adopt the baby, but they have to get the consent of the biological father.
Yes.
Very important.
Yeah.
I think, Liz, I can give a brief overview of the process of adoption.
Yeah.
So if you qualify to adopt a kid, there's a process you have to follow. And I think it's important at this point to note that, you know, there are some people who go to children's home.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you're such a cute baby. Oh my God, I want to go home with you. And I'm like, please avoid that, because you will bond with that kid, and then when you start the process, you might maybe find that the child is not free for adoption.
Yeah.
So it is always advised you start with the process by going to a registered adoption society, where you give them your requirements. Maybe you want to adopt a girl or a boy between specific ages.
Yeah.
And then after that, they will conduct a check. They will come to your home and see whether you're suitable parents. You know how you live. You know, there's some parents.
So they actually come to your premises to just see your living conditions.
Yeah, your living conditions, and even I think they also look at, do you even have the finances to take care of the kid?
Oh yeah.
Is your home a good place to raise a child?
Mm-hmm.
Such things. I mean, they don't want to give a druggie, you know,
Yeah.
a kid. So they come to your home. After they do that, they also have to check whether the child is free for adoption. As Lizzie had mentioned earlier, there's a way they determine whether a child is free for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they give you the baby for a period of not less than 3 months, so that you can bond with the baby and you see whether it's a good fit. And then after that, you start the legal process. That's where you go to a lawyer, so that they find the application for adoption in courts.
Yeah, and go to a good lawyer, because you don't want cases where you're being told you trafficked a child, you
Yeah.
kidnapped a child.
Yeah.
And also that goes back to going to a registered society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Start the process correct and finish it in the correct way.
In the correct way.
Yeah.
So now that we know who can be adopted and who can adopt, let's go to who's not allowed to adopt. So an adoption order shall not be made in favor of the following persons unless the court is satisfied that there are special circumstances that justify the making of an adoption order. So number one is a sole male applicant in respect of a female child, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Number two, a sole female applicant in respect of a male child, for obvious reasons again.
Yeah.
The third, an applicant or joint applicant who has or both have attained the age of 65 years. And then the fourth one, a sole foreign female applicant. So for this class of people, they have to justify and give compelling reasons to the court on why the court should grant them the adoption order. So let's say maybe there's no one else to adopt the child, and also the court looks at the best interest of the child. So if it's best to give this child to a sole foreign female applicant,
Yeah.
I think the court will grant the order. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
Bex, you can tell us about the prohibited people.
Yeah, so the next category we're going to discuss is those that are prohibited from adopting. And the first category is the homosexuals. I know in other jurisdictions they are allowed to, like we've seen in movies, Modern Family, it's comedy. Yeah, and the next category is if you want to adopt jointly, you must, and you're not married, you cannot adopt.
Yeah.
So you must be a couple married for over 3 years. The next category that is prohibited from adopting is people of unsound mind.
Yeah.
As defined in the Mental Health Act. The next category is a sole male foreigner. I think in the past we've seen cases where so many foreigners, especially in the coastal towns, they've been charged and convicted of violence, abuse, and even sexual assault against children. So I think that is the reason they came up with that prohibition. I don't know why it's so common at the coast. I think maybe these foreigners come with the notion that we're going to take care of the kids, we take them to school and give them a better life.
Yeah.
And they take advantage of the children.
I also
And it's
think
so sad.
they take advantage of the poor families.
Yeah. So that's prohibited. And the last category, if you've been charged and convicted of a crime against a child, including sexual violence and causing bodily harm to the child, you're prohibited from adopting a child in Kenya. So I think, Lizzie, I can discuss the consents that are required in case you get to the point where you're filing an application to court for an adoption. There are various consents that are required. I'm just going to give a few examples. For example, if you're adopting a child who is over 14 years, you have to get their consent.
Yes.
I mean, I think this child, they're aware, it's not a small, an infant.
Yeah, they're not children per se. They know. They know they exist.
A whole teenager, you have to get their consent. And in other cases, if, for the instance I had given earlier, if the mother gets married to another guy and that spouse wants to adopt the baby, they have to get the consent of the biological father. And there are some cases where both parents give out their kid for adoption, but they have to give their consent. You remember what you had said, what amounts to a free for adoption? There was that one you said that both parents have agreed for the kid.
Give up the kid.
So they have to get their consent. And I think another one I can say is if it's a foreigner, both couples are foreigners and they want to adopt a kid, they have to get a consent in their country of residence. So I think that's it. I think those are elaborate examples of consents.
I think you've covered everything on the consents that are.
No, there's one, and I think it's important to mention. If you're married and it's only one spouse who wants to adopt, you have to get the consent of it. But I don't know how practically that would work. Like, would you even still be married?
I think it's a very sensitive issue between a couple, because let's say as the wife, I want to adopt, and my husband as I want to adopt a child. You see, that's going to cause a strain in the marriage. So I don't know how that practically. I think very important. Maybe someone who's done it can share with us. But either way, the court cannot grant. I don't think they can grant an adoption order where the both spouses are not in agreement. I wonder whether that's in the best interest of the child.
Because if the other spouse doesn't agree, he would give his consent.
He would, of course, would take care of the baby.
The adoption process won't go through.
Well, that's interesting. So, I think you've covered all the consents that are required. So the last part is adoption hearings. So all adoption hearings are confidential. They're very private. And then after the hearing has happened, the court will either grant or deny the adoption order. And in the event that the adoption order is granted, the effect of the order is that all rights, duties, obligations, and liabilities relating to the child are transferred to the applicants as if the child were their biological child. So effectively, you become a parent to a new baby or a child, baby or child. Yes, you become parents, and I think that's the start of a beautiful thing.
And I think anyone who is in a position to adopt, I feel like that's a very noble thing to do. You're giving this child a life, identity. So I think if you're in that position, go for it. In terms of the process, I think it's a very straightforward, and the agencies are there to help you throughout the process. It's very straightforward, and it's not expensive. So, I mean, just get a good lawyer, go to a registered agency. Very noble thing to do, and you have your child.
But I still feel there's a lot of stigma on adoption.
Exactly.
Even if you adopt, there'll be that either family or friends. But that child is now legally your child. I don't know why there's so much stigma around adoption.
I think if you are thinking of adopting, it's good to start talking about it with the people who matter in your life, the people who you care about, so that it will reduce the stigma. So
I think, guys, that brings us to the end of our discussion on adoption. Thank you so much to the viewer who asked us that question. So keep the questions coming. And also, if you like this video,
make sure you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.
And tell a friend to tell a friend.
Bye.
Bye.